Major Tom by the Friendly Vandal on scpwiki.com. Chapter 1. In the rolling hills of Nebraska, among barbed wire and thistle, the approaching moon watches a young boy on horseback wander around through irrigation ditches flooded with water from rusting iron pipes and sweeping swaths of prairie grass. His younger brother, unaccustomed to horseback riding and insecure of the dark that surrounds them, the cows, everything unilluminated by his brother's headlamp, finds himself clutching the back of the older shirt silently, not willing to admit defeat, but willing to admit the obvious. We're lost. The words squeak out in a prepubescent squeal. He is dark-haired, with light olive skin. He is no outdoorsman by any stretch, and is clearly focused on the dreary situation, intelligent eyes flickering in LED light and cloudy moon glow. The older is clearly more used to the saddle. He grips the reins tightly and moves quickly. A good decision-maker, but not an inherent problem-solver. The red-haired boy in cowboy boots and a farmer's tan presses forward in a random, unchosen direction. The property is new to him in many ways, large and all-encompassing in all that he has ever desired in a short life, but he's young, a child of the prairie, and prone to mistakes. He stays silent. Stubbornness runs in the family. We are lost, aren't we? No, I know exactly where we are. No, you don't. Yes, I do. The younger directs his gaze towards the grass. It's a long way down. He knows he could make it if he fell, but it isn't about trying to fall off a horse. Despite his aversion, he clutches the older brother a little tighter, trusting in his confidence. They stay silent in his manner for a while, the older directing the horse over hills and through trees. It's not until the moon is full over their heads and the crickets are in full song that the younger breaks from his usual contemplative trance to speak. Do you think Mom had her baby yet? Although this was the most interesting event taking place in the duo's plain, inelaborate lives, there are mixed feelings in the younger's voice. A sister. The three of them. The youngest left with Jamie, the ranch owner at the farmhouse, were overall neutral to this announcement. 3 was enough. 3 was a lot. 3 was having to share a room and waking up with someone crawling on you and playing with your stuff. 4, however, was another story. They discussed in late-night conversations over the past 9 months. 4, and you're halfway to your own soccer team. And a girl, too. To prepare for his sister, the 3 pooled their knowledge of what girls liked. Dolls. Pink things. The oldest had a girl in his class that liked guns, so they added that to the list, just to be safe. They had mutually decided that dolls and pink things were not something they were into, but guns were pretty cool, so maybe it wouldn't be so bad after all. They debated whether the new baby would be allowed in their fort, which yielded that it was too soon to see where their loyalties lie, and the vote would have to be postponed to a later date. They considered, briefly, where the baby would sleep, to which they decided that it would be in their parents' bedroom for now, or it would just sleep with the youngest in his bed. As it neared that date, their parents became more excited about the new arrival. The 3 shrank away to some extent, experiencing a strange form of melancholy that occurred with the prospect of sharing their lives with a complete stranger. And now the night was here. Their mother had arranged for the 3 of them to spend the night at Jamie's ranch, which the older frequently worked out. The younger, not accustomed to the outdoors and less accustomed to farm work he knew would follow, was less excited at this proposal, but decided to tag along with his brother to herd the cows in on horseback as an alternative to playing Monopoly with Jamie and the youngest. Although the dark-haired boy was unfamiliar with manual labor, he would rather work than die of boredom. And here they were, lost at night. It was an understatement to call the current middle child bitter. I don't know, scoffed the oldest. What did Mom tell you? 10, he replied. Do you know what time it is? How the hell would I know that? The middle child shrugged. Usually, the older knew things like that, like how to tell the time with the sun. The horse trekked over another hill, out of the small grove of trees they had traversed. Suddenly, the older pulled back on the reins, and the horse dropped abruptly. Jack, mumbled the older, look at this. The younger boy sat up tall, gripping onto his brother for support, and peered over the older's left shoulder. Moonlight poured over the expanse in front of them, mixing with the sickening artificial light strapped to his older brother's forehead. Grazing in the dark, grass swishing softly on their ankles, stood the herd of cows they had been sent out to herd in. They stood, head to tail, in a singular ring that stretched out of the beam of the headlamp into indistinct dark shapes spreading over half a mile. Silent, strange, a herd of 65 in a pristine circular line. No crickets chirped, no frogs sang. Jack takes in a breath, and many miles away in a backcountry hospital, Claire breathes for the first time, too. Chapter 2. It takes the wound a moment to bleed. There's a moment, as Jack Bright looks out onto the front lawn from behind the dining room table, that everything remains in suspense. Mikkel on the pavement, ladder on the roof, still. TJ moves his head towards the outside, and the world works in slow motion in response to the sound of bone cracking on cement. The body settles. The sun shines. Mikkel on the pavement. Jack jumps up, but TJ is already on the porch, calling for him halfway outside. Old wooden door closing with a thwack. Mikkel is still sleeping. The blood starts coming and fills in the little rivulets in the pavement. Covers the little rocks and stones like water in a stream with the sun glinting in the summer heat and TJ's red hair shimmering, freckles shining. Mikkel on the pavement. The old screen door slams and TJ grabs Mikkel's arm and screams. Takes the wound a moment to bleed. There's a moment as Jack Bright, 17, looks out onto the front lawn in front of him that everything remains in suspense. Mikkel on the pavement, ladder on the roof, still. TJ moves his head towards the grass, recoiling in pain and confusion. The early spring sun beats down on the pavement and strikes the dark blood matting itself in orange hair and soft brown freckles. Mikkel, coming around, face an expression of grogginess, then confusion, then alarm. TJ's blood makes the grass sticky, staggering, falling into the grass. The clouds drift by in a slow cotton ball haze through a sea of pristine blue. And the youngest bright sun lays still, as the world, as he feels his brother's pain. 3. This phone number has been disconnected. Standing in the hospital phone booth, Jack fumbles in his pocket for the crumpled piece of paper, glancing around to see if anyone was watching, and punched in the code. Please hang up and try again. 4, 5, 3, 3, 8, 4, 7, 4, 4, 5, 1, 0. Pre-recorded telephone message cuts off into the long, disturbing electronic beep of a phone left off the hook. Jack counted the seconds and looked around again. A car pulls up to the front door, and he watches as his mother and her new baby get in, father in tow. The heat of the day fogs up on the scratched plastic of the tiny booth, crepes under his shirt, makes him sweat. Mikkel usually did this. The fear of somehow messing up wells up inside of him. Jack checks his father's ballpoint pen cursive. Yes, it really does say 128 seconds. Has it been that long yet? Maybe I should try again. Please recite your connection code. It's the same woman that told him to try again. The gray Toyota minivan drives up to the faded rural hospital parking lot and disappears over the hill. Travis Elder, 42, 6608, Secretary Red Case Condition. There's a moment that Jack Bright holds his breath, waiting for confirmation, knowing that there wouldn't be one. To his delight, the phone off the hook beeping doesn't come. He checks his father's cursive again under the title "Call in Case of Emergency." The corn in the neighboring field rustles softly in the hot, stagnant wind. Operation, please give your request and connection type. Adam Bright, level 4, family connection, emergency code 61005. It's Jack. Oh, kid. It's a woman's voice, which doesn't come as a surprise. Jack has never spoken to his father at work, only ever a spiraling array of female assistants. He had suspicions about this, as all three of the brothers did. They had had the heart to tell Claire, at 6, that their father was most likely not returning home to his only 4 children. Look, he's busy. Can I take a message? Yeah, tell him that TJ's in the hospital. The phone starts cracking wildly, and Jack squeezes shut his eyes in desperation as he hears the sounds of the line being closed with fuzziness. Jack. The line drops back into the sound of the phone off the hook, and he knows this time that it won't pick up backup. The man in the booth slams the phone back into the cradle and takes a moment to wipe this gathering sweat from the nape of his neck before pulling out the second quarter, the one that he'd taken from Claire's piggy bank 45 minutes ago for this exact purpose, and sticking it into the iron slot. Dad hadn't paid the bill for the landline. At this point, they didn't complain, just improvised. Most of Jack and Mikkel's time when their parents were away was spent like this, improvising. Jack dutifully punches in the 10-digit phone number and selects the correct connection code for the black void his parents disappeared into so often. Mom didn't always pick up either, but what is Evelyn Bright lost in correspondence, she made up for in afterthought. The hospital bill would be miraculously paid, maybe, or there would be a hastily written letter pushed into Mikkel's hand while getting gas. An afterthought was better than nothing. Operation, please give your request and connection type. Evelyn Bright, level 4, family connection, emergency code 5007. Hold, please. Jack opened his mouth to reply before realizing there was nothing to reply to. Birds chirp and sing in distant trees, contradicting his own mounting anxiety. His parents told them that they would be gone for about 2 weeks on business. 2 weeks passed, and then 3. Months passed. Halloween and Christmas passed. Mikkel started paying their bills with the money he earned at work, wherever that was. Keep the government from finding out that they'd been alone for nearly 8 months now. Mikkel was skilled at calling their work because he did it each Wednesday night at the phone booth in the rickety gas station 2 blocks away. Mikkel rode his bike back every Wednesday as Jack and TJ started putting Claire to bed. Mikkel walked in the door every Wednesday night saying no, they didn't pick up, not this time. Mikkel would then take his father's revolver from on top of the fridge and check that there was a bullet in each chamber. Click, 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 click. Spin it in a circle like a child's toy with his finger on the trigger. Jack sits in the living room and thinks that one Wednesday night he'll just shoot it right in the kitchen, just right into the tile, or at the window, or at the roof of his mouth, the click of playing with death to the tune of crickets chirping in the soy field beans outside. I'm sorry, can I take a message? It's the man on the other end again. Jack jerks back from his thoughts. Yeah, just tell her Jack fell back on the story that he and Mikkel had discussed. That TJ fell off the roof while helping Mikkel shingle and got hurt. We're at the hospital right now, and they're saying that he'll be okay, that he needs stitches, and they're keeping him overnight. Mikkel's up with him right now, and Claire's here with us, just to be safe. There was more that Jack wanted to tell his mother. Maybe something about wanting her to come home, or at least speak to them at all. About everything that's been going on at home, about Claire or Mikkel, anything, just to hear her voice at all. But Jack kept his mouth shut when the secretary asked him if there was anything else, then thanked her, said goodbye, and put the phone back on the hook, and the paper back in his pocket, and his heart back in his chest, and walked through the dusty, revolving door back inside. Chapter 4. Jack. Jack. Jack comes around slowly from his place in the stiff wooden hospital chair to the sound of crickets outside and a 6-year-old child tugging at his dirty Walmart t-shirt. Claire. Jack rubbed the heel of his hand into his eye, sleepily looking at the digital clock at TJ's bedside. 3:46 a.m. Shit, what is it? I gotta pee, Jack groaned. Why can't you ask Mikkel to take you? He's not here. What? Jack squinted through the darkened hospital room towards the folded-out couch, where Claire had insisted Mikkel sleep next to her. Empty. Okay, just, let's... Come on. Jack heaved himself to his feet and held out a hand, feeling tiny fingers curl around his own. Be quiet, okay? We don't want to wake up TJ, yeah? Jack cast his gaze over at the figure sleeping on the bed, the faint glow of orange curls against the filtered country moonlight. Purple, blue, black eyes swollen and closed. His younger brother was still sleeping, recovering from the tight black stitches sewn into his forehead. Yeah. Hey, cut that out. You're too old for that. Claire removed her thumb from her mouth as Jack led her down the empty hallway into the bathroom. Though Jack had his moments with Claire, she really was closest to TJ, then to Mikkel, and then to him. That was what it was like having multiple siblings. You knew where you were on the totem pole of love, and Jack, as the cynical middle child who made and sold questionable alcohol out of the back of the garage, did his best not to be engraved as a role model in any way, shape, or form. Mikkel did fatherly things like shingle roofs and load guns and work late nights at a job. Jack made sure that the amount of cash he got didn't become suspicious to the bank. Mikkel hunted deer to save on groceries and skinned them on the back porch and cooked them and sold the horns and pelts to the farm store down the road to make money and froze the rest of the meat so they wouldn't starve, and showed them how to cook a meal and trapped rabbits with squirrels and chopped firewood and an axe like fucking Paul Bunyan, and earned what was suspected to be a hard, honest living. Like being left alone at 21 years old to care for 3 siblings was what I was born to do. Jack shoplifted and gambled gently and ate a worm for $2 last week. He liked to think it was an equal trade-off. Even when he felt worthless in comparison, they about broke even on legally and illegally obtained cash when the two of them sat down to pool their earnings at the end of the week. They had a system. Mikkel would take the cash and tell him that he really looked like he did well this week at his explicitly legal minimum wage job. And he would say, yeah, he did, and then pass Mikkel a flask of the leftovers under the table. If Jack got caught in front of TJ or Claire, Mikkel would make a show of condemning such hideous underage acts, and Jack would act in mock horror of what he had done, and then would continue to brew and gamble anyways, because it had become a surprisingly stable form of income in recent months, especially when the electricity was cut off mid-December, and they scrambled to pay in a week-long scare. Promote good citizenship, live off bad citizenship. The bright way. Halfway down the hall back to the room in the haze of fluorescent lights and cracked wallpaper, Claire stopped walking. Caught Jack by surprise, making him lurch back and stumble. Hey, come on. Claire stood, thumb in mouth, staring down at the hallway. Let go of his hand. Tears welled in her eyes. No. Jack sighed. He was not going to do this at 3 a.m. Well, where are we going to go then? No. Jack knelt down to her level. Claire, come on. What's wrong? Hey. Jack reached out to take her hand, seeing she was crying harder now. His little sister reached out to his forearms. Don't hurt. What? Don't leave. No. I don't want you to get hurt. What? You think I'm gonna leave? You will. Claire, I'm not gonna leave. Promise you won't get sick. What do you mean? Promise. Jack sighed. Look at me. Jack raised her chin with a finger so her line of sight matched his own. I'm okay. See? I'm gonna be fine. I'm fine. Yeah? Promise. Okay, I promise. Claire seemed satisfied. Jack took her by the hand again and led her back to the darkened room, praying she would fall back asleep. When she did, with Jack laying next to her on the couch, he slipped out of the room, closed the door behind him, and made his way down to the sidewalk outside. Jack's eyes widened at the sight of Mikhail. Dude, Mom is gonna kill you. Not if she doesn't find out. His older brother exhaled smoke from the cigarette in his hand. Isn't that right? Oh. Don't tell Mom. Yeah, it's just... Mikhail raised an eyebrow. Don't talk to me about it, Jack relinquished. Don't talk to me about it. Jack relinquished, swallowed, and went to stand next to him. His brother raising the cheap camel back to his lips. They stood in silence for a minute, looking off at the darkened fields of beans and corn, the singular farmhouse in the distance. The stars shone and the crickets sang. Smoke drifted from his older brother's mouth as he breathed. Some guys came to TJ's room earlier. Jack looked at him. Mikhail exhaled. You're asking questions about what happened. Really? You think they saw? Depends. Probably to some extent. If we keep our story straight, we'll be fine. Just don't tell anyone. What do you think they'll do to him? Like the X-Files or something? Mikhail smiled. You know where Mom and Dad work? Yeah, government. Jack looked forward again, examining the shadows on the pavement. I don't know. They said they couldn't tell me. Yeah, they can't tell you. Jack jerked his head back to look at Mikhail. Wait, do you know something about them? I work there too. Mikhail smiled and looked at him. I'm not going anywhere though, don't worry. But anyway, people like TJ, you know? No, actually, I don't think I know. Jack's blood rushed with anger and anxiety. Oh. Mikhail looked up at the stars, contemplating. Look, you know what they say about if a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? Yeah? Okay, well, here's how I see it. There have always been people like TJ. You read about them in the old world texts or whatever, just like witches and warlocks and shit. Back in those days when stuff like this happened, you know, people didn't really know how to describe them and they just passed it off and people went to live in the woods and nobody happened. And nothing bad happened. Like, yeah, people cared, but it was magic or somebody pissed off Jesus or something. You follow? I guess. Yeah, well, now that we're no longer living in the Dark Ages, people are smart. When someone like TJ's born, there's no casting them off to live in the woods. It's systemic removal. I'm talking CIA and FBI caliber. So when shit like this happens, where I fell from the roof and TJ was clearly the one to take the injury from the fall, people start watching. It's no longer the fact that God didn't will me to take those injuries or some shit like that. These people see that. And they see something larger, something that really is a witch or a warlock, and they start watching. And they keep watching. And they watch, and if they see something that indicates that something deeper is going on, then they get taken. No more problems. Situation is safe, people are safe, and the people will continue to be safe throughout this happening over and over again. That's the idea. So, if it happens and there's no one around to see it, it's fine. But I think they might be keeping an eye on him. Where do they go? Mikhail shrugged. But anyway, the way I see it, it's like... He waved his cigarette. You know, TJ has always been special. Wait, what? You haven't noticed that? Like, when he was younger, he could always do shit when he wanted to. Like when you were 9 and fell off your bike. Do you remember that? Yeah, what about it? He healed you. No, he didn't. I got lucky. I fell on the grass. And he was bleeding. Jack opened his mouth to respond, then shut it again. Shit. Look, Mikhail exhaled more smoke. I think it's different now, though. Back then, he wanted to take that for you. He was 8. He felt empathy for you. He healed you. This time, I think he was trying to help me, and something happened, and he accidentally took it. I don't think he wanted to feel my pain. I think he was trying to make sure I wasn't dead, you know? And that's when it happened. So he's changing. Mikhail shrugged. Puberty. What can I say? He was always a late bloomer. What about Claire? What about her? Is she special too? I don't know. I think TJ's the most obvious. Gonna have to work to keep that covered up. Claire, if you watch her, Jack, she's... I don't know. She knows shit. Jack laughed. You're fucking crazy. Listen to yourself, Mikhail. She's 7. She likes fucking Polly Pockets and Cabbage Patch Girls or whatever shit. What the fuck does she know? The future. Jack wheezed. Fucking dead serious, Jack, okay? I'm shaky on it too, but last fucking week, she was coloring and she gave me a picture of me on the roof. Jack stopped laughing. Significant events, Jack. I don't think she knows what they are, but she sees them. Mikhail dropped the cigarette onto the pavement and put it out with the heel of his boot. Look, don't tell anyone what I just told you about, okay? This is between you and me. Keep TJ safe. Keep Claire safe. We make sure nothing happens. 6. TJ is a pale, freckled child with red hair, their father's, in a frame that stands wiry and worn hand-me-downs. Often onlookers comment on his striking resemblance to Mikhail, but to Jack, his youngest and oldest brothers look and are, in essence, entirely different people. TJ lacks Mikhail's broad shoulders and tan shoulders and arms, his sunburnt neck, his iron resolve and firm competence. TJ wavers in the path of decisions. Mikhail thrives in it. TJ is soft-spoken and feminine in nature. Mikhail is accustomed to confidence, a short-haired cowboy with adventurous resolve. His older brother has always moved as a subtle and direct force of nature, one might even call clean, careful, swift, lethal. But such thoughts do not occur to him then. So when addressing the conflict of TJ's acquired tendencies, Jack and Mikhail first make sure he's asleep in another room, and then speak over the dining room table. His older brother drinks a cheap beer from the can, and after a moment, Jack moves to the fridge and gets one for himself, too. He is not yet of age, but such things are a formality in the battered barns and sun-bleached houses of small Midwestern farm towns. It's disgusting, but he drinks it anyway. The alcohol fills a widening pit of frustration in his stomach. Calms his nerves. It calmed his father's nerves, too. In the time before TJ and Claire were born, when it was just the two brothers and their mother and the smell of heavy alcohol and charms from AA meetings. But they understand to this day that they are not to discuss this time. They reach a decision, or at least a heated compromise. Jack finishes his beer and Mikhail takes another from the fridge, not because he wants another, but to give him something to do to keep himself from throttling some goddamn sense into his younger sibling. Jack goes to bed. Mikhail plays with a revolver in the kitchen, even though it's not Wednesday, and the next week, with TJ recovered enough to return to school, Jack outfits him in long sleeves, long pants, and thin gloves. Sends him off with one instruction. Touch no one. 7. In late April, Mikhail says he's receiving a promotion. When TJ and Claire are in bed, his elder brother opens a locked steel box on the kitchen table and shows Jack 2 faded leather holsters with a revolver in each. In words that he did not yet know, Jack knew this object was special. It felt radiant, powerful, unearthly before him. He studied it very closely. These revolvers were much different than their father's on top of the fridge. No, these were old guns, weathered down with the sweat of generations. The yellow glow of the dining room light above them turns the handles a sickly, iridescent off-white, the barrels a diseased gray-green, engraved with tendrils and elaborate vines of faded gold. The belt is an odd brown leather that is somehow miraculously still bound together, but to Jack, the weighted feeling of unease is only in the silver objects the belt holds. Mikhail picks them up, and Jack is surprised, like he wasn't expecting the movement to be physically possible. He fits so well in his brother's calloused hands that he can feel the hairs stand up on the back of his neck. "That's not pearl," Jack sputtered out. The handles. They remain off-white even when lifted into Mikhail's hand, shining not by nature but by polish. When Mikhail's killed deer, he would boil out the marrow into a stew and throw the rest out. All sorts of parts in the pot. Femurs sitting on the kitchen counter to be used. Skulls he let TJ hold. To a Jack in the future, in a different life, anomalous is a bone-stained word on iron breath. It's a word that's laced with gold. 8. In late May, Mikhail leaves for work and he does not return in 2 days, as previously promised. Jack spends more time sleeping than he ever has before, being a man of science, but not without an imagination, left as a residue from his childhood of books and role-playing games with his brothers on hazy Midwest summer nights, not needing, but only sometimes unwelcome. Jack dreams more than he ever has before. He dreams of his mother and father, of trees that fall in the forest and are never heard, of Star Trek reruns on TV, cows standing in a circle, tail to muzzle some sort of unholy shrine. Sometimes he dreams that Claire is there with him, in the center, sitting on the ugly rug from their living room with her dolls in the middle of the soft prairie grass. No getting her there, boy. He dreams of rabid animals, too, and all too often imagines the herd, all 67 of them, twitching and lurching through the grass in a sickly, uneven sort of rhythm, rotating the circle in a slow, even, mesmerized pace. Round and round, the circle gets smaller, and Jack feels the need from his spot on the hill to rush in with some kind of paternal duty, but is frozen to the spot. Claire. Claire did not resent her brother when she died. If Jack had known this, they might have been closer. But he regarded himself as a poor protector and a worse provider, the kind of thing reflected in whiskey and long, sleepless nights lining up bodies by floodlight and response team lantern in the dust of collapsed ceilings and broken linoleum tile. If only they had a way to tell them that these things were about to happen before they did. But that isn't Jack's story to tell, either, and it matters little now. Sorry, cowboy. Close, but no cigar. Jack wakes up, always, in the same hazy, nauseous way he tends to do these days, with a guilty weight settling right under his ribcage and his vessel aching, breathing shallow. He sits at the kitchen table with a restless energy that breeds anger in his chest like some small animal gnawing at his sternum, and he'll find himself grinding his teeth in an old nervous habit. After about an hour of dazed, drunken silence, Jack will wander to the garage and continue his illegal moonshine activities with shaking hands that make the condescender wobble when he touches it. So much work for so little gain. Frustration, it isn't faster, but brewing is a slow burn kind of process. It pays the bills. You okay, buddy? Asked the pot-bellied redneck he usually sells to. 2 gallons for $40. He pays in cash, as he usually does. Jack sits hunched on the garage steps, feeling like he's conducting electricity. He's not one for small talk. Coming down with something? Jack nods and puts on a weary smile. Something like that, yeah. His chest squeezes with irrational rage. He doesn't want to speak, but feels like he has to allude to things being alright, at least to some extent. Not like the redneck would call child services anyway. He hopes he doesn't look how he feels, but judging by the scruff on his face that he's been too tired to shave away and the weight he's lost, it's a stretch. Probably the weather. Your brother back yet? The drugs go in a compartment under the redneck's floor mats. Not that the police would care anyway if they found it. Nah. Jack scrambles to find something to say. This has been the first human interaction outside of Claire and TJ that he's had in 2 weeks. Business trip. Not entirely false, he reasoned. And Mikkel does come home. Mikkel comes home in the rain in mid-June. Pulls in late at night as Jack sits at the dining room table with his hands around a beer, half asleep. He's pale and weary-eyed, the feel that will be days before you sleep, and the holsters around his waist still powerful, radiant, you are the right hand of God and will kill for him. He mumbles a tired and half-hearted hello. This is the first time. It's always the hardest, darling. Collapses in bed. And Jack pays him no heed other than that he is home. Mikkel sleeps. He sleeps until the next afternoon. He sleeps with the guns loaded next to him where he can see them reflecting light in sleepy haze. It will be 1,000 years before you rest. It is the way of this place. 9. Mikkel has worked at the same ranch since he was 16 years old and has been riding a horse as long as he could remember. Jack himself could never quite understand what his older brother could possibly find entertaining about herding cows on horseback all day, but what made up for it was the competitions Mikkel did for fun. His older brother always got excited about the working cow horse runs. Jamie, being the owner of the ranch and prime proprietor, Mikkel's apparent aptitude for the industry, was always happy to allow he and Chestnut to enter and ride around in aimless circles in a sandy enclosure while fellow hillbillies looked on and cheered. Jack would lean against the metal fencing with John Deere ads strung up on it, and watch Mikkel and his horse kick up sand in tight circles under fluorescent lighting and country music with a smile on his face and an odd sort of contempt that comes with seeing your sibling doing something stupid. Even if Jack was no cowboy himself, preferred the likes of Star Trek reruns to paying cattle, he could tell Mikkel was good by watching how his father swelled with pride, how the judges talked about him over the speakers, how Jamie praised him. Mikkel was good. Mikkel was always good at being a ranch hand. When Mikkel was 16, Jamie taught him the delicate art of bull riding and encouraged him to enter in his first rodeo. Now, Jack had never regarded his older brother's job and subsequent hobbies to be too entertaining, but he quickly realized that he had a deep, burning passion for watching his older brother get thrown off large animals at high speeds in front of the crowd while wearing ridiculous clothing. Decided to always be in attendance. After all, Jack had never seen a stupider sport than riding a bull for 8 seconds. The only thing was that Mikkel was good. This was infuriating to Jack, who came up with the specific little brother goal of watching the person who he constantly bickered with get thrown off something. No, Mikkel was good. Too good. Jack would watch with anticipation his small sports arena a couple hours away from home as his brother grabbed either side of the chute with difficulty, fastened his helmet, and awaited the buzzer with hands on rope reins, only to hold on for the full 8 seconds with frightening ease. Rider after rider would be thrown off violently before and after him, but no, Mikkel never fell, and Jack would bathe once again in the burning feeling of inadequacy that came with having an older sibling that succeeded in something after all. When Mikkel was 19, Claire tagged along with Jack and his father for the first time to see Mikkel ride at a rodeo. When it was his time to go, Mikkel threw one fringe-adorned leg over the side of the chute and waited for the handlers to let him on. This bull had been particularly violent, and it was clear that Mikkel was nervous, watching the previous rider not only get thrown off in the first 30 seconds, but getting stepped on repeatedly as the animal continued to buck. The handlers on horses drove the bull back into the chute to the crying jeer of the crowd, and Claire tugged on Jack's pants sharply. What? Jack had to raise his voice over the clamor of the competition, the buzz of excitement and anxiety that made Mikkel grip the metal chute tighter than he had before. "He shouldn't go in!" Claire yelled. "Don't let him go in!" "What?" The handlers gave a steady signal. He watched his brother climb into this tight chute completely, hands on either side, steadying himself and locking the dented helmet and mouthguard. The announcer started reading off his name and number, to which his father cheered next to them. Claire looked at him, eyes wide in panic, then turned sharply and put her hands on the fence surrounding the arena. The buzzer went off. The timer started. The chute opened, sending Mikkel and the wild animal into the ring. But the bull didn't buck. Mikkel looked confused at 1 second on the timer, still holding tight to the rope as he had when the bull charged inward. The bull didn't buck. The bull stood still in the middle of the arena, despite knocking the sides of the chute with anger a few moments prior. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. The audience is in shock. The ref looks to the announcer. At 4 seconds, the bull starts to move again, and Mikkel continues to brace for the first impact that never comes. The bull is walking. The bull is walking back towards the chute. Mikkel looks dumbfounded. 5 seconds. 6 seconds. At this point, even if the bull was to start bucking, Jack figured that Mikkel could hold on for the last 2 seconds and still make the round, even if this counted. The bull finishes walking back to the chute of its own accord and huffs loudly. 7 seconds. Crowd silent. Bull faces the chute, and it's very clear now that Mikkel is expecting to die, to be thrown in the air in the most violent buck in the history of all rodeos. When it hits 8 seconds, the buzzer goes off. The crowd acts like it isn't over, remains silent, entranced. When the chute opens again, the handlers don't need to do anything. The bull walks in on its own accord. The chute closes, and Mikkel, a little stunned, stumbles off, pushes himself over the side of the chute, and lands on his feet, just as blood trickles down Claire's face from her nose. He would have died had I not changed it. Jack thinks of this now. Jack thinks of this as the crickets chirp and pierce through his angry haze that clouds his thoughts and mind. Jack thinks of this, and Claire wanders in and asks if she can sleep with him. She had a nightmare. Jack thinks of this as he lies awake with her there, thinking of trees falling in the forest and wishing there was more that he could do. 10. Jack will learn, in another life, the importance of not letting one's guard down. There is always endless safety videos in his future. There is even a future ahead of him where he, too, will be an enforcer. He will reprimand violations of human imperfection in a place that must by all lengths strive to remain industrial, clean, separated. He will learn to place a wall between people and things that only look like them. He will even learn, long into his future, to control himself, to be disciplined, and to fine-tune his sense of situational empathy. He will pick his battles and save what may be saved and move on, and some will call him heartless, clinical, stubborn, and others will call him director. But Jack is a child, and he cannot see the consequences of these things. He cannot act fast enough. He does not have yet the eye to anticipate, to see where incidents happen. He is not dutiful to security, containment, protection, because he does not need to be. And so when TJ runs over and hugs Mikkel, Jack does not stop him. He does not stop him when Mikkel's fingers touch TJ's bare neck. And had he known that Mikkel was unusually tired because he had been treated recently for a still healing gunshot wound that had shot through his shoulder and sent him to a Foundation hospital for 2 weeks, he may have acted differently, though it is not likely. Carelessness is not an easily avoided trait. And when TJ's breath hitches sharply and he falls into Mikkel's arms as dead weight, Mikkel makes the decision in the sharp, quick way that he does, that he will not let his youngest brother suffer. Some would consider what he does to be barbaric, and he would scream and fight with him as he wordlessly loads their 14-year-old sibling into the back of the car as Jack does. Others would consider it a necessary evil. As Mikkel drives away, does not return for another several weeks, saying to him, "Do not let them take her, Jack. There is hope for her yet." 11. Summer day fades into hot, burning summer day. Jack's body aches in an endless haze. Claire plays outside with the neighboring children, and he sits at the dining room table and feels cold and fuzzy, distant. His thoughts are a single tired string, fraying, searing in the summer heat but cold against his skin. In the mornings, as he rouses himself from deep, dreamless sleep, Jack's body is heavy. Claire needs to eat. Jack doesn't, or feels like he doesn't. There's no appetite. The heat sickens him in a way he has not experienced before. On stormy days, the water is hot, comes down in sheets that darken the sky, flood down to the cracked road into old cement gutters. Droplets strike the pavement, and Jack stumbles outside for the first time in weeks, blinking, body aching and dragging, sitting on the damp, sun-bleached porch just as birds chatter nearby. The door creaks open. Old, rusting springs that his father promised he would fix. Jack? Light filters out onto the porch and onto the back of his neck. Jack focuses his eyes on the afternoon rain pelting the sparse grass on the front lawn. He aimlessly wonders about the date, wasn't paying attention. Days and weeks slipped together in a sort of disjointed, hazy way. Late June, maybe. Something like that. Jack, can I play with Sydney and Gabby? Claire hangs to the door handle, red raincoat over tiny frame, rubber boots that were handed down through 3 bright boys before they reached her, coming up to her knees. Jack looks out wearily past the broken-down porch and the patchy front lawn to the girls splashing in mud puddles across the street. Just stay where I can see you. I will. Jack rubs his eyes as his little sister races across the street, greeted by cries of joy. June already. It's been a month since graduation. He should be thinking about college. But he can't. A long ways away, in another life, a short, fat man would sprawl in a battered armchair at the training center he ran, and would tell Jack all he knew about the births and birthings in a serious, lucid tone. A rarity preserved for close friends. Jack would tend the old brick fireplace and open some liquor, and they would drink, and the blonde-haired veteran would tell him about the myths in the field, stories of cattle dying and dogs being nailed on trees, the storms and violent winds, cars flipped and people gone, Hume readings fading in, out, spatial anomalies, can't counters breaking, phones not working, guns jamming. The child would be born within 5 miles, and when it would breathe, said the old rumor spread around GOC task forces, all the strange happenings would stop, and so no one would notice it. Only lasted the mother's labor. The universe preparing for a new god, Star of Bethlehem. Stranger things have happened, said the man with the rifle. No way to test it. Would make sense if it was true, I suppose. The way they come and the way they leave, all these kids, not just the Greens. The legends are all the same. Always a little strange. Posts to get worse with the power and significance. All that kind of shit. I knew guys that used to peel out if they saw the cattle run, you know. Do you believe it? Was Jack's question. Something he knew the answer to. The man's side readjusted slightly. Jack, science loathes coincidence. Did not bother thing called Jack to see the universe end. Thing called Jack had seen many such things, after all, floating and drifting as it did. Some would call it a god, others would call it dust. But this isn't Jack's story to tell. Not yet, not for a very long time. Ask any shithead on the street and they'll say that they've seen something strange at some point in their life. For the sake of standing on solid ground, no, I don't think so. Jack rested on the rainy steps, pale and weak, decided he was too tired to think about it right now. Leaned his hand so it rested on the splintered wood railing. Watched Claire splash in puddles with her friends under a sheet of rain. Jack, on the rainy steps, was born with his umbilical cord wrapped around his throat in a tight death grip. They thought he was dead. Didn't cry for minutes as they worked to loosen it off. When Jack on the rainy steps was 4, he caught pneumonia that landed him in the hospital for a month. They thought he would die. When Jack on the rainy steps was 8, he ran into the street to chase a raccoon and was hit by a car. The impact sent him skidding on the ground, bleeding from his chest. When Jack on the rainy steps was 11, the top of their snow fort caved in on him. Jack on the rainy steps at 19 couldn't understand why he couldn't do anything right, why TJ and their parents were gone, why there was no reason for him to really be here at all. He feels listless. He wants to hurt something. He doesn't know where to let the anger go. He wants to know why he feels this way, why he can't pull himself together long enough to be an adult for Claire, why he can't just be like he was a year ago, happy and content and not barely functioning and exhausted. Jack on the rainy steps doesn't want to die, but he doesn't want to live. Jack on the rainy steps wants to fall asleep and not wake up anymore. 12. When the agents came, just like Jack knew they would, the tree falling in the forest, agents with their bulletproof vests under stiff button-up shirts. Jack crosses the house to the kitchen, reaches up on top of the refrigerator, and loops his fingers on the old iron revolver that clicks quietly in his hands. A dangerous wait. Jack has never been a very terribly good shot, but his father had him and Mikkel shoot enough dead-eyed plastic deer that he was decent. The shiny dress shoes filled with concealed steel toes make the old wood on the front porch creak. And Jack has a sharp moment of panic, like an electric shock at his holding a gun. What did he expect to do? Shoot them? A person in a stark black suit wasn't a pheasant or a squirrel. Jack, someone's at the door. Jack whipped around to meet the tree in the forest, about to fall, playing with her dolls. Her eyes widen when she sees the gun, and Jack fumbles slightly. Go. Room. There's a sense of urgency in his voice that he hopes carries. Now, hurry, Claire. Claire abandons her dolls and bolts down the hall to their shared bedroom just as a knock comes on the door with knuckles that have been broken, healed, broken again. Jack's chest compresses tight again for a moment, and he remembers tree in the forest. If the tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, tree in the forest, they're here for her, and his chest swells with the constant anger he's felt burning inside him for literal over 4 months now suddenly blazes into hot fury. He swallows, palms starting to sweat a little. And when they took his little sister away that hot Midwestern afternoon, her shrieks rang and echoed down the empty street and resonated in stagnant air and buzz of lazy insects. And Jack did not shoot. He did not shoot because they took her from her room and there had been 4 of them, not 2. And because he was foolish and sick and lost count and didn't know what to do. And when they immediately grabbed him and threw him to the floor and knocked him out, he didn't know what to do when he woke up alone and wandered around the house in a daze, looking looking as bats roosted in nearby barns and herding dogs barked in the distance. He didn't know what to do, and he didn't know where to go. He felt frustrated and furious, but empty and dull and sick with anxiety. He wandered out of his house and down streets with the hurried pace of someone looking for something they've known they've lost. He ran until the streetlights ran out and he hit gravel roads and long, endless fields of corn and beans, obscuring his vision into the clear, cloudless night sky and the lightning bugs that blinked among them. And eventually, he turned around, because what else could he do? Where else could he go to find the person he needed to protect? He wandered until the sun came up and it hits his neck in a hot, humid haze of morning, and he keeps walking, sweating in the morning sun. He walked past his brother's horse grazing in Jamie's pasture. He walked into his neighborhood with the kids playing basketball down the street. He wandered back in with a pained sort of desperation settling tight in his chest, but his body felt heavy and his spine felt tight. So Jack Bright slept, and slept alone. From bed, Jack finds the strength to move. He is shaking with anticipation, but never has he even thought of doing this before. No, all thoughts are driven, pointed. He is sure, not Mikkel, not his brother, not TJ, no, nothing. And no one could stop him. The hallway to the bathroom is a dark green mile that he walks briskly. Someone has pulled the trapdoor out from under him, and there is nothing below but hate and disgust. Claire is not anymore. She's not here anymore, sleeping in the bedroom next to his own, and when he locks the bathroom door, someone drives down the rickety concrete outside, and he sees the headlights continue into nothing from the tiny bathroom window, hyper-aware. Jack refuses to see himself in the mirror. He has not moved far from the bed in weeks, and instead opens it to the tiny metal shelves and scans quickly like a man dying for water, like a man craving. His mother's medication sits gathering dust. Mikkel's toothbrush. His father's razor. Some strange, distant part of him doesn't take apart the razor for the blades because he cannot bring himself to break something of his father's. But the blades are still sharp. Jack has accidentally cut himself with less. There's a moment, as Jack holds it in his hands, that he wonders what his mother would say. It is not factored in. Jack knows what she thinks of him. Damage. Pain screams down his arm and he leaves him stunned, drunkenly happy, high off fumes. There's buzzing in his body and screaming in his mind that tells him to strike again, and he complies, dazed and ruptured, writing the feeling gave him. His breathing starts to slow. Relaxation. His mind is spiraling down like a dying plane from the sky. Damage! Jack's knees are weak, the world is spinning. He strikes a third time, barely able to see his skin through the 9 even scores of ragged, bleeding flesh, and the craving leaves his body like a soul. It stings and burns like nothing he's ever felt in his life. Exploding and shrieking, his breath comes in a calm, even rhythm. There are black spots in his vision. He rinses off the razor and red fluid he forgot he had, runs and streams down his arm and dribbles into the sink. Jack is okay. Jack is calm. Tranquility comes over him as the hate starts to leave his body with his consciousness. Ethereality. Jack is awake. Crickets sing out in the mirror in the summer air that rustles the soybeans outside in the gray heart of early morning. He's thin enough now that Mikkel is able to scoop him up from the bathroom floor and out of the puddle of red fluid staining his shirt. Jack feels all the energy he had is gone from his body and lets his older brother carry him, slumping into his chest in the most direct form of human interaction he's experienced in weeks. Another car drives by outside, a farmer heading to the field. When he's laid down on the beaten couch, Jack almost wishes Mikkel would have kept holding him for just a little while longer. Human touch has become a rare commodity. Gauze and bandages pulled against half-clotted blood, swollen red cuts, and bruised skin sting with rubbing alcohol. He feels fluids, light-hearted but satisfied. Mikkel squeezes the cloth, wrapping his arm gently, letting it soak up the excess fluid. All the hate is gone from his body. He deserves that. He deserves that. He deserves more. He's too weak to deliver. His brother presses an ice pack to his wounds, lays an arm in an incline against Jack's chest. The popcorn ceiling is a color in the early morning light that Jack hasn't noticed before. There are blankets pulled over his pale body up to his chin, and feels a warm hand on his forehead. It's shaking with fury in the moment it lingers there. He's made Mikkel angry in the past, but not like this, not furious into silence. Jack feels no remorse, laying there in a silence of his own, cold, feverish, distant, floating, the scum of the earth. Suddenly, Mikkel has a bulky cell phone that he's never seen before in one hand and is running his fingers through his hair with the other, silhouetted in dawn light flooding through the kitchen windows. Reading Travis Elder 426608. He vaguely remembers TJ and Claire, but there are no feelings, no connection in this moment in time. Briefly thinks of Mom and Dad. Wished they were here in an odd, offhand sort of way, as he's wished for the past 10 months. Dreamlike condensation beads on the window as the humidity rises. Mikkel is pacing and talking on the phone, then redialing again, reading off numbers and letters and words. The old radio turned on low sings, a song his father liked. Jack feels strange but content with the pain searing in his arm. Claire left a Polly Pocket on the floor near the rocking chair. He's so tired, angry. Across the street, the sound of the dogs TJ likes to play with waking for breakfast. He wants to sleep and not wake up. In a distant, far-off place, Mikkel exhales in relief. Mom. Jack, my son, I love you. If you can read this, please come home. But this is a very old message, even if heartfelt is not for Jack to know. 13. Jack is awakened by the kind of deep, rolling thunder that accompanies Midwestern summer storms. The kind that leaches humidity through the windows and coats the streets in a thick, sickening heat. The clock reads 2:24 p.m. and the world outside is cast in a deep black hue, the shadow of thick gray clouds forming a solid rolling wall in the sky, like water rushing over a dam. There is no rain pounding on the window, and Jack becomes deeply, innately aware upon this realization of what this means. From where he lays still in his bed, the middle brother Bright feels the wind rustling through the cornfields, hears the lack of hearing children at play and the sound of the TV turned to the weather channel in the other room, senses the fundamental disturbance that comes with the testing of the old Great Plain. No dogs bark, no cars rattle down the cracked suburban asphalt. There is only the thudding of his heart in his bandaged arm and the sound of the clouds approaching. Mikkel is at his bedside, absent-mindedly picking under his fingernails with his pocket knife. He sees the ember glow of a lit cigarette hanging from his mouth. I told you, Mikkel growls under his breath, and the past 2 days hit Jack like a truck. Told you to keep her safe. I told you. The room falls into silence, and Jack grips the sheets tighter. He grimaces for a moment and looks at the ceiling. Mikkel knew where she was. He must have known. But Jack has failed profoundly in many ways in the past 6 months. So instead, Jack looks back at him and says, "Don't smoke in the house." Mikkel looks at him, takes a long, slow inhale and removes the cigarette, and exhales the smoke pointedly into the air. "Asshole," Jack croaks. He feels like a grayscale, weak, sick, hurting, empty, and strange, but no longer floating. Mikkel takes another drag on his cigarette and leans forward, elbows on knees. "You really were out this morning." Jack squeezes his eyes shut. He'd been hoping they wouldn't talk about this, especially not with Mikkel. His older brother removes the cigarette and exhales smoke thoughtfully, looking at the floor. Jack holds his breath. He doesn't want to talk about it. He isn't sure that Mikkel wants to talk about it either, in the solemn way that his father wouldn't. Wind rustles the soybeans behind their house and disrupts the neighbor's wind chimes. It's a cold wind and a stark heat. "Sit up." Jack complies, surprised at the searing pain his arms makes when he puts pressure on it. Didn't feel real when he did it. Felt real now. "Where's TJ?" Mikkel took him far, far. The world spun. TJ hurt like nothing he had ever felt before. "Can't we go home? Can't we go home?" he pleaded, but Mikkel did not turn around, and after the first hour, TJ knew for certain that this was not a hospital they were going to. He slept, and when he woke up, they were still driving. Fresh blood seeped through his sweater. "Please, God, Mikkel, go home. Just go home." His brother did not speak to him the entire car ride. Not when TJ cried, not when he screamed, not when he begged him to stop, not when TJ knew in the back of his mind what was happening. No, not when it dawned on him that maybe his brother would never protect him in the way he thought he would. And when TJ passed out from a syringe pressed in his arm and subsequently awoke, he woke in a place with bars on the windows and his brother was gone. But this, too, is a story lost to Jack. No matter how much TJ may wish it wasn't. Mikkel transfers his cigarette from his right hand to between his middle and index finger on his left and slaps him. Jack reels back out of surprise and then immediately throws off the blankets and bolts up to meet his brother eye to eye. World swimming gently as he does so, he's a bit out of breath and off balance, but after a moment of wavering, his eyes bring Mikkel into focus and he feels his own breath boiling hot into his throat with rage. "Hey, what's your fucking problem? You're my fucking problem!" Mikkel takes a drag from his cigarette. "What the fuck do you think you're doing? You think I have the time for your melodramatic shit?" Smoke comes out of his mouth, hot as his words. Some ash falls onto the carpet. "I don't know, maybe if you were ever here, you might have had the time for it." Jack feels the familiar heat of frustration rising in his chest. Mikkel laughs and shakes his head, smiles, and takes another drag on his cigarette. "Look, Jack, I love you as much as the next guy." Mikkel starts, voice deep and sarcastic, scraping the edges of his tenor register. "But our sister's gone now, too, and that might be a problem, Say, did you consider that, huh? Did you even try when they came to take her? Didn't you even care? Don't you try to tell me I didn't care about them!" Jack screams, anger boiling over. Mikkel's voice contorts into a look of humor and surprise. "Well, I mean, you sure don't act like you care. You don't really act like you care about anything, actually, so maybe you really don't. You don't fucking understand! Oh, fuck, I don't understand you, that's right. No one understands you." Jack pushed him back, getting ash on his shirt. "Poor you. I think it's always been about you, that? All about me!" Jack guffawed, blood boiling. I think that's pretty funny that you say that, since you've been gone all this time, and I've actually been trying to handle both of them at once. I don't know, maybe thought here, maybe if you cared, you would have actually been here at all." Oh shit! I forgot I was actually doing something. You might want to try that. You know what? That's fine. Fuck you. Mikhail grabbed his backpack and threw open the dresser. Fuck you. You want to play that shit? Fine. What do you think you're doing? What does it look like I'm doing? And Jack threw some clothes on and extras in the pack and pulled on a pair of discarded worn sneakers. Thunder boomed in the distance. Mikhail laughed again. You're fucking stupid. You're stupid, fucking impulsive little brat. You know that? Jack grabbed the bag and swiftly walked to the kitchen, throwing open cabinet doors, granola bars, water bottle. Oh shit, he's running away! Mikhail snarled, leaning onto the counter, exhaling cigarette smoke in the open air. Better call the fucking police, folks! He's a walking menace. Look at that. He'll fuck you up as soon as he stops fucking himself up. Cabinet slammed shut. Mikhail's breathing comes in hot, ragged breaths, and Mikhail continues in a slow, angry drawl. That's right, folks. Man of the hour. Look at this melodramatic little shit. Spineless fuck, that's what he is. Before he can stop himself, Mikhail whips around and throws a punch directly at his older brother's face. Mikhail catches his clumsy throw by the wrist and twists sharply, sending him slamming onto the ground. Oh, fuck, folks, he's fighting. We got ourselves a fighter, damn! Mikhail closes his eyes sharply and lets his back take the impact of hitting the kitchen floor. Mikhail is on his feet now, cigarette discarded, hand still around Jack's wrist. Mikhail grabs his arm with his other hand and pulls sharply. Mikhail crashes to the ground just as the tornado sirens start taking off in shrill, sweeping tones. They roll over the prairie like a flood. Jack spots something he hasn't before on the table a few feet away above his head. A heavy-looking grocery bag. The smallest of the oldest Bright brothers wriggles free from his brother's grip just as Mikhail has time to reorient himself and grab his ankle. Jack awkwardly hits his arm with his other boot, thankful for the first time in his life that they're steel-toed, and makes a go for the blunt object, not really knowing what to do with it. But the bag is heavy in his hands. Heavy and clunky. There's a metal box inside labeled with 1,000 numbers and codes and in transit stamped on the front. But before he can slide the lock in to yank it open, he hears the click of a gun and turns to see his older brother standing, no longer smiling and laughing with rage. Still, calm. Both hands on one revolver. His older brother backs him up until Jack's back is pressed against the wall of the kitchen. Jack realizes with stunned clarity that he has crossed a line. Decides with the same stunning clarity to cross it further, driven with rage and the thin electric wire shooting pain into his thoughts and driving his body to self-destruction. Put it down, Mikhail growls. His fingers are steady on the gun. It's pointed, direct, confident. There's a moment of silence as sirens sweep back up into a pitching howl. What, this? Jack swings the lockbox up. Something metallic clatters inside. What are you gonna do, shoot me? You seemed pretty obsessed with me living a few minutes ago. Jack. Mikhail is solemn and clear. You don't understand. What did you do with TJ? Jack demands. Clearly, he has some leverage here. Damn it, Jack, he's fine. You took him away, didn't you? Jack's ears ring. He knows what Mikhail's done. You took him to that place! Jack, put that down now. Mikhail keeps the gun trained on him. There's a moment as Jack Bright looks down the barrel of his brother's gun that he becomes aware of the weight in the box in his hands. The heavy, important feeling, the godlike divineness, the strange, prophetic kinship, all this, and rage drives Jack's thumb to the latch, and the latch to the left in the top of the iron box opens on welded hinges. Mikkel's gun jams. He hears it go off. It's in this moment that Jack no longer cares about the mud-caked, ornate amulet approximately 15 centimeters in circumference, made from white gold with 13 brilliant cut diamonds surrounding a cake, oval cut ruby in a starburst pattern presenting itself to him from inside the shoddily locked box. Mikkel's eyes widen. The silver ivory creature in his brother's grip has never jammed and will never jam again, and Mikkel, understanding the weight of this cosmic decision, does not shoot, as Jack thinks he will, instead lowering the gun one slow, creeping inch at a time until it is level with his leg. Mikkel looks at him a long, careful second and makes a decision of his own. It's in this moment and the moments that follow when the tornado sirens shriek up into the sky and down to the ground just as Mikkel orders him out onto the street, and he drops the metal box to the tile floor and takes off into the stormy world outside, that Jack knows he cannot die and somehow becomes complete. A fully developed person, just like his brother's guns or his sister's cows. In another life, not far away from here, takes the wound a moment to bleed. There's a moment as Jack Bright, level 2 researcher, looks onto the metal pole impaling his abdomen, that everything remains in suspense. Briefcase open, artifact rolling to a stop against his skin. He moves his head a little to the side as it gleams. His body settles. The fluorescent lights shine. It takes the wound a moment to bleed. There's a moment as blood wells from his snapped body and soaks through his stiff button-up shirt. The Jack begs not to live in a forced, horrid way he hasn't before, not with all the days of summer slipping through his fingers and smearing together in an ugly heat. No, Jack Bright has never been more sure in his life he is not wanted than he is in this moment in the October of 1973, not with the days unable to move from the bed, not with the rain coming down on the concrete, not with the night, the razor, or the sound, or the radio on low singing an endless melancholy song. Nothing has changed, and nothing will change. Jack is still nothing. Jack is still no one. The amulet glimmers in the fluorescent light, and in a moment, with the first leaves falling from the trees outside, Jack is not Jack anymore. 15. The present. Secure instant message log between Dr. Charles Gears, Northeastern Region Research Director, and Dr. Jack Bright, Multi-Site Director, beginning date 11/24/16. Gears, are you awake? Addressing a minor disturbance in the lab. Please stand by. My plane leaves in 15 minutes. We'll talk when I get to Omaha. 1:23 a.m. Fuck. Okay, well, I made it, but I can't catch my course connecting. Everything's grounded. Snowstorm. Nothing like Site 19 snowstorms, but enough to keep everyone down. Are you there? Yes. Holding tank malfunction. Unfortunate damage. What do you mean unfortunate damage? You're worrying me there. Major damage. I'll repair it tomorrow. Anything else? Yes, momentarily. Unfortunate severity. Gears, what do you mean by unfortunate severity? Moderately severe. Shit. Well, I was hoping to be back next week, and if I can catch another flight out tomorrow, I might be able to make it. I would not be optimistic. It's a snowstorm here as well. Typical Siberian snowstorm, but the cold is also unusually severe. If you were able to fly to London and then into Moscow as planned, you wouldn't be able to fly to the site until it warms slightly. We've been having mechanical failures. Nothing with the chambers, but the outer doors are suffering some problems. The latest supply shipment was a close call. Damn, I was only gone for 2 months and the place is falling apart. Stop typing, it was a joke. Still, I was hoping to get back. You aren't required back for another 2 weeks. I was expecting you to spend more time at 88, personally. Is there something you need to attend to? Yeah, well, look. On a personal note, I'm, winding down into an episode again. You know how it is. I'd rather be in a psych ward, I know, if I have to be out of commission for a little bit. You see. Yeah, sorry, that was weirdly personal. Shit hit the fan at Site 27 and I'm fucking exhausted. Like, holy shit, you wouldn't believe. Like, fuck. I see no problem with you seeking comfortable aid if you're feeling unwell, Jack. Where are you? Omaha? Nebraska, yeah. Only, in Ocean away. I could try flying up through Canada and take the Alaska route, but if you guys are snowed in, then the Barrow port won't be much better. A reasonable assumption. Hopefully it won't be that bad and I'll just need a few days. A few days rest and I can let it all blow over. Not as bad as it used to be, but sometimes I miss my meds. Again, reasonable. Nebraska. Charlie, I swear to fucking God, don't do it. Don't you have family there? Fuck, you did it. Shit. Yeah, I do. I was avoiding that option, but my brother still lives here. He owns our old house in a ranch. Hometown is like an hour away. Could you stay there? Until you fly. To be perfectly honest, Jack, I would be more comfortable knowing you were staying in a Foundation-connected area. I'm wary of hotels in your situation, considering the amulet and your potential to self-terminate in this state of mental health. Oh my God, could you imagine me showing up on his ranch at 3 a.m. on Christmas? You're a funny guy, Charlie. You seem hesitant. Okay, so, how do I put this? Mikkel is one of those people when it comes to mental health. I don't know if he's still like that, but when he was younger, that's how he was. Maybe I could just not tell him, but if something happens, you know how I get, Charlie. And plus, quite honestly, I haven't been home since I left when I was 18, I think. It was kind of funny, actually, looking back. How I left, I mean, if we were adults, I think we could have handled it better, but we were both young and in kind of rough patches. TLDR, there was a lot of frustration and depression and testosterone and also some other stuff that happened. But family's family, I guess. You aren't presenting any evidence not to. How far away is it? An hour out from here, I think. I'll take a taxi. Shit, this should be fun. I only ever see him at family stuff, really. Hey, shit, that reminds me. How's TJ? Alright. I haven't heard anything to indicate to me otherwise, but there hasn't really been any tests this week, so I would not know. That would be more in Agatha's realm. Yeah, I know, but she's asleep like all the other normal people on site, so I can't annoy her. Look, I'm gonna lose connection when I leave this airport here in a few minutes. Thanks for helping. Yes. You don't need to repair that holding tank today if you don't want to. As long as the thing is moved to 1, that's okay. And it's not gonna break a second one. It's Christmas, what the hell? Take it easy. I appreciate the sentiment, but I am not one for festivities. Though I encourage you not to strain yourself all day either, especially considering your health. Yeah, thanks. Hey, keep me updated on the mechanical problems. And everything else. As always. Yeah, as always. Merry Christmas, Charlie. Ditto, Jack. Come home soon. 16. When Mikkel had his first heart attack 2 days after the Christmas of 2016, it was Jack, dressed in boxers, unshaven, and stumbling through a strange but familiar numb stupor that found him collapsed on the floor of his office in a fetal position. And it was Jack, too, who started acting like himself again after a couple of days of sitting on his laptop in his hospital room, bickering and snarking at him as he wished. Mikkel liked it. It felt familiar. 05-4 came to visit him in a short while after he had his stent put in, and Jack, being a man with very few barriers, bantered and bickered with her too, as Mikkel slipped in and out of a painkiller-laced sleep. It was a while before he realized fully that he had guards. People in nurse costumes with guns in their pant legs. People standing outside in black. Someone important is here. Mikkel didn't feel important, but then again, he never did. The elusiveness of his overseer position and the protection it required was never something he quite got used to. Jack explained his snowbound situation to them in casual conversation over coffee-stained classified paperwork and his laptop with the secure connection, and Mikkel himself fell asleep again. He doesn't remember ever sleeping this much in his life, and it bothers him greatly. Jack types and occasionally sends over a pointed comment about him being old and having to eat bran muffins, and just Mikkel sleeps and slurs back a couple swear words to let him know he's not fucking nursing home age yet. Fuck off. It feels comfortable. His brother is lively and snarky and shaven again, and Mikkel is pleased to note that he wears short sleeves. It wasn't that bad of an episode. Not like the ones in the past that had him out for weeks and left him listless and barely functioning. Jack does not kill this body and does not hurt it. He recovers well because he's a damn strong person as much as he is a damn asshole. It'll leave him numb. It'll leave him angry. He'll fall behind on his paperwork and live in isolation for half a week. He'll sleep and starve himself and feel nothing, but goddamn, he's no pussy when it comes to stalled neurotransmitters. He's proud of his brother. Brights don't go down without a fight. It's probably one of the better Christmases Mikkel's had since his divorce. But it's funny how delicate these things are. The thing about the business is always the delicacy of it. It takes so long to build up this narrative, to write this story. It takes pages and pages to make a site, logs, readings, paperwork, hundreds of people, daily communication, cameras and training simulators, safety procedures and breach doors, guns and guns and guns of all different kinds, shifts after shift of guards, fences on fences on fences, titanium feet thick, dormitories, people. It doesn't matter when it goes to shit. Never does. On New Year's of 2016, Jack and Mikkel do not watch the ball drop. They do not partake in celebrations. Jack is pale and trying to process 10 of his little devices showing 10 different readings from one site in Siberia are screaming off the hook. They do not speak to each other. There is no need to speak. They just have transitioned from family business to industry business. It happens so fast. There's nothing to do. You can call and type and try to get a hold of people on the inside to know what's happening. But despite all of Jack's lockdown orders and overrides and the people that Mikkel knows that he's picked for the situation, it all comes down to brute force like a broken dam. It's a painful way to lose everything. Little mistakes snowball into bigger ones. When you're on the outside and a breach of that caliber happens, there really isn't much to do but watch the casualty count rise and the electricity go out. And then there really is nothing. Nothing at all. 3 a.m. on January 1st, 2017, Jack sits down and stares at the floor between his feet. He does not cry, but he trembles. Mikkel knows his brother is the director of 3 sites, but 19 is the largest. The one that he put his blood, sweat, and tears into. The one that he spends most his time at. The one he tried to make sure was pristine and functioning on all calibers always. During the winter season, when the population of the site is reduced to a skeleton crew of 1,400 people instead of the normal 4,000 plus those passing through, there's about one item in containment per person. It's funny how things fall apart like that. Jack is not afraid for himself, although he should be, because it's funny how things fall apart like that. See, breaches never work the way they should. Not breaches like this, not Tempest nights, not the ones where the walls themselves smash open and leave the Siberian winter to form drifts over abandoned lab equipment and cold bodies. Not the ones where lone light posts through long shadows over people whispering and hacking off clammy limbs for bait. Not the ones where people spend months isolated 23 floors down just because the rescue teams just can't clear the rubble that fast. Never like the safety videos. Never like the procedure. All the words and time and effort, all the carefully planned and submitted containment logs, carefully crafted chambers. It doesn't matter when the levee breaks. It never mattered at all. So 6 months and several disciplinary hearings later, Mikkel Bray watches the containment teams at Site 17 use long metal tongs to grasp his brother's life in their hands. It slides off easily over his surrogate's limp neck on a medical examining table. They lift his head with a gloved hand to slide the chain over. They place it in a foam case lined with 4 different locks and 3 different identification tags, standard procedure, and place it on a plane to a small safe class site in Thailand, where the case itself slides perfectly into a dark little locker with its number stamped on it. It locks behind him. Mikkel does not cry, but he trembles. For the first time in Foundation history, there were no survivors. Not a single one of 1,400 people lived. Some lived to board a helicopter to another site. Once the rescue teams could access the carcass of 19, some even lived to see a Foundation hospital and give an interview of what it was like to chop off their own arm to free it from a locked door, or to be poisoned by a contagious memory, or to see the containment wing G explode into tongues of flame with something roaring inside, or to not sleep for days, to live in little camps with other people and survive by lighting files on fire to keep them warm, to see the face of the people who started the raid dead on the ground, to see the carcass of GOC tanks in predictable hallways. So Mikkel likes to imagine that it's like sleeping, like a deep meditation. That was what it was like to be dead in the way that Jack was. He likes to imagine that his brother is inert, as the logs put it. Because he was the only survivor, because he wasn't on site at all, and that is why the blame fell on him. Was it fair? No. Was it for the best? Maybe. His brother did not function well after the 4th month of the 19 fiasco. He did not do well in a humanoid containment cell, and Mikkel knew this was because he was a child with olive skin and curly black hair that belonged back in Nebraska under clear skies and open cornfields. They tried to paint him as incompetent, and maybe he was by the end, tired and frustrated as he was. And maybe that was why Mikkel had voted aye when the formal complaint of the site director vote came up. Because after all that, it really was for the best. If they were trying to be humane And Jack was no longer eating, no longer thriving, no longer living in a profound way. And Mikkel hadn't seen his brother before in all the years he'd known him. Then why force him to try? Do you have any family history of depression? The doctor in the ER asked Jack Bright as his older brother laid sprawled on the gurney. So a few years later, when Mikkel Bright had his second heart attack, he was alone. Not so lucky. Because karma's a bitch. Because these things build up so slowly and then crash down so quickly. Because the universe gives brights when it needs them and takes them as it pleases. And that was the story of how Jack Bright survived. Because some people are just meant to. Item number SCP-963. Object Class Safe. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-963-1 is to be contained in a safe class containment locker. Flesh to artifact content is not permitted. Further testing is not permitted.